if your process has a first name, you don't have a process.
You're listening to the How Manufacturers Improve podcast, hosted by me, Kirby Sneen with the Manufacturers Alliance. If you've ever wondered how some manufacturing leaders have become so successful, then you're in the right place. In each episode, we cover the successes and lessons learned of industry leaders, then break it all down into actionable insights. This episode is all about why some of the same problems keep coming back and features Nathan Hull, Lean Leader with Renewal by Anderson. Nathan, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for making time to talk to me about getting to the real root cause and really talking about why some of the same problems just keep coming back again and again and again. So thanks for making the time.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. I appreciate the invite.
You've got a great background in manufacturing. And, as we talked a little bit before we hit record here, you kind of brought me up to speed on what that is. Would you bring everybody listening up to speed on your background?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I've kind of have a wide variety of, manufacturing exposure throughout the years. My grandfather owned a tool and die business. So I had the ability and the pleasure of actually starting and learning some of the tools of the trade in my early teens. He showed me how to run, Bridgeport tool, lathes and those type of machinery when I was 13. So that's kind of my first exposure to manufacturing in general. I worked as a manual machinist for about a decade until I went into active duty service in the military. So I was active duty, working on an aircraft carrier for 4 years, stationed out of the West Coast. I was a aircraft technician and did most of my operation on the flight deck. So, this is where I got exposure to like fluid power, metal framing and airframes and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, just troubleshooting in general, right? Everything we do with an airplane is very mission critical. And it's the idea of, what do you need to fix now versus what can wait for later? Looking at tools and a whole bunch of stuff. So that was a fantastic experience. And then, post-military, started my formal education. So I have 2 degrees from Dunwoody, both in design engineering and business management. And so after that, I worked at MTS Systems and Boston Scientific for a few years as a mechanical designer, mostly working in equipment designing departments, and then transferred into operations management, held roles as, supervisor, manager, director, a few things. And then right after the pandemic, kind of shifted away from, process and like operations management solely into continuous improvement and lean manufacturing. So I've been doing that for several years now. And it was always a part of all those other roles. And now I just get to do it full time. Absolutely love it. I love my current role. I love just working with people and finding these solutions. It's very rewarding.
So I can tell you're just super passionate about people and improving processes. I think it's the perfect combination. So I want to talk about data as we get into this topic. And the reason I wanted to ask you about data first is because, oftentimes I will look at the dashboard, I'll look at the analytics, I may look at a 5S audit and I'll go, really? And I'll want to investigate. I've gone so far as like with a 5S audit, I've sent moles in and said, hey, I want you to purposefully don't do this. That way when the 5S audit comes through, let's see if we actually get a ding.
Sure.
Right? Because I don't want a false positive, right? I want everything to just be legit. I want the score to be reliable and consistent and good. So we have that baseline. And so I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, how do you ensure that the data that you're reviewing is even actually accurate?
Sure. I think there's a variety of ways. A recent example is, even earlier this week, I was getting a new baseline for a process that we've been putting a lot of effort for improvement in. So we knew what it was like 6 months ago, and I was just double checking, getting reinvigorated, looking for what do we do next, right? Pulled the inspection data. And it was actually so much improved that I found it a little hard to believe at first. My first reaction, I just contacted the head of the department that was inputting the data and really just said, hey, is this right? Like, can I believe this? Like, this is almost too good to be true.
Right.
And he pretty quickly wrote me back. He's like, no, yeah, it's correct. Like, it really is getting that better, even from my anecdotal perspective. We haven't seen as many errors. I can just kind of verify that off the top of my head. So that was one way. I mean, also in general, just kind of getting the context of it, and looking at like the breadth of the data. Have we been collecting this for, a few months or a few years, right? Like, how much information do I have to work with?
Yeah.
The bigger the data set, I like. The more numbers, the more information there. I think it's easier to find true trends and be able to identify the outliers more quickly. And really just talking to the source of the data, like how are we collecting it, right? And what does it really mean?
Yep.
I think those are a lot of just ways to kind of verify and trust what you're looking for.
That's good. Yeah. If you're looking at an SPC chart and there's 4 data points, you'd be like, well, maybe we should get some more, right?
Right.
Like some of that stuff's obvious. So it's the more, the better for sure. Okay. So then let's talk about like solving the actual problem. So what I have found is that as we have had individuals work towards like a lean practitioner certification, for example, sometimes when they're looking to apply what they're learning, they are given a problem and then like given the solution. And we're like, whoa. Like, you get to look at the data,
Right.
verify that it's accurate, and then identify gaps so that you deal with, real problems. And so people don't always deal with the problem that they're given. How do you make sure that people are really clear on the problem that they're actually solving first?
Sure. I mean, I think lots of times we start with some sort of defect or, isolated incident, right? And although is quote a problem, it's not the problem, right? So we all as individuals just psychologically have a tendency to have preconceived notions and assumptions about what's going on, right?
Yep.
So the faster you can work through those, I think the better. Looking at doing the investigation, which I think sometimes people confuse with problem solving. Understanding the problem is not solving the problem, right?
Amen, brother.
Like the situation, like when you bring your car into the shop, right, comes to mind. You bring your car into the shop and you're having that conversation over the phone with your mechanic and he's asking you these questions, right? Like you tell him it's making this weird noise and he starts asking you, hey, what about this? What about this? And sometimes you're like, oh, well, I don't know. Or I don't know if it was doing that 3 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
That really in context is not problem solving. It's just understanding the problem. But it feels sometimes like we're actually getting to root cause. Mm-hmm. And those two things really, if you separate them, right, and take a minute to, just look at that as an investigation. When I talk about this with teams, I try to, guide them to be like detectives, like put on your Dick Tracy hat.
Yes.
And you're investigating right now.
Yeah, was that a 1999 reference? I love it.
So we're detectives, right? We're not the judge and the jury yet. We're just collecting information potentially to present to someone else.
Yep.
Right. And so if you come at it from that mindset, and really just live in it, right? Live in the problem for a little bit. Yep. That bodes better solutions.
So let's jump to the whole like symptoms versus causes thing. How do you help people focus on addressing causes, not symptoms? How do you label those things and train people on those things so that they really know the difference and can treat them accordingly?
Sure. I mean, I think in many organizations, it comes down to like, when you really get to it, it's a cultural thing. If you live in an environment where you're constantly just firefighting, right? Firefighting feels like you're fixing things, but it's not fixing anything, right?
But it feels good.
Right? Like if you're an emergency room doctor, you work in an emergency room and every patient is an emergency and you treat them and then you move on to the next patient, right? Yep. If that's your culture of your workplace, well, that's what you're going to get more of, right? If you foster that, if you track that, and that's your metric for success, it's how many emergencies did I fix today? Then you're going to do more of that, right?
Yeah.
And also, like I talk about practical application, like in the real world. Like we do want to get to root cause, but you also probably have to do address of the symptoms at times, right? And like the last 2 companies I've worked with, there's, several instances where we do a lot of cutting, right? We have these industrial saws. The situation where like a saw blade is consistently becoming dull, right? Well, you do want to figure out why the saw is becoming dull, but you also have to replace the saw blade. You have to keep things going, right?
Right.
So it's this idea of, the practical application, like we do need to do the surface triage, but let's not stop there, right? Like that's not where the journey ends. That's just the beginning of it. And, just asking the check is always, if I do this, will it occur again? Right.
Right.
That's kind of like your double check.
Yeah.
So, that kind of guidance can really be helpful.
I appreciate the saw analogy. That's going to stick. That's really good. How does that apply to like your current role and responsibility and even your environment? If you could speak to your operating environment a little bit to everybody, because I know that you guys are unique and you're a little bit different. I mean, it's not like you're doing, 1,000 or 10,000 parts. Hey, real quick, before we get into the answer to this next question, if you're interested in continuous improvement topics like this, and you want to learn what your peers are doing to improve, check out our CI community group. Don't miss out. Click the link in the show notes. It's specifically for CI leaders in manufacturing that are always looking for a better way. If that's you, join us. All right, let's get back into it.
Yeah, so at renewal, we kind of make one window at a time, 1,000 times a day, as opposed to making 1,000 of the same window repeatedly. It's a very, interesting environment. We get a real connection with the customer. In some cases, we're making a house at a time, right? So it's all custom all the time. It's custom at scale, which is an interesting environment. So we try to make our processes repeatable and, systematic as much as possible, but there's always variables coming in, right? Everything is a one-off. So just working in those environments and, it can be very interesting.
So with that environment, and 5Y approaches to getting to a root cause, which most people listening will know about, and if they don't, as soon as I said it or you say it, they'll Google it and pick it up pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. You can watch a video and talk to a peer and I think pick up 5Y pretty quickly. It's pretty straightforward to help people understand what they could do to be able to figure out what's causing the problem and then address it. But there's an assumption there with 5Y that there was the one single thing that you can do, which isn't always the case. In fact, in my experience, like it's usually 2 or 3, sometimes 4 or 5. So how do you guys go about addressing more of those systemic issues and systemic causes versus just the one?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a few different approaches. One I've taken is actually doing the fishbone first that has kind of a broader scope of things and then doing a 5 whys, right? That can sometimes speed up the process. If I do a 5 whys in a group atmosphere, I've done things where I have multiple 5 whys going on at the same time and we rotate people. So if you can imagine whether you're out on the floor or even at your cubicle, those giant poster board pieces of paper, right? And you're literally, you get 3 or 4 people and you have each person start at one, right? It kind of turns into a game because really it's, 5 whys is a tool, right? It's not the solution. It is this mechanism we use to cultivate thought and creative investigation, right? Mm-hmm. So, I've had, every person write their first why and then answer it and then write the next question and then rotate to the other station, right? And so
diverse perspectives there.
So you're kind of mixing it up, right? Yep. And that, it does sometimes, if it works, removes the individuals from their preconceived notion. Like I'm trying to get here and I'm going to write this series of whys to get to this thing.
My solution that I've been wanting to do
I know where
months.
the X is on the map and I'm just going to how do I get there? This mixes it up a little bit. So you have to pick up on someone else's train of thought and continue forward.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. It makes me think about how the value of that is demonstrated for everyone. When they don't do that, it's almost like you're on your phone, and you're typing something in, and it's like, hey, what are you trying to type? Like, get you to that destination,
right? And
then autocorrect comes in, and it's like, I'm trying to get you there. That's where you wanted to go, right? Like, how many times has autocorrect really been helpful?
Correct.
I mean, I would say 9 out of 10 times I'm like, stupid autocorrect.
Right.
So there's the value of the diverse perspectives there to make sure that you get to the place that is going to address a cause that will prevent a problem, not just get you to your solution, so that you have like a good cause statement, not a good solution statement.
Correct.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, so then how do you prep teams to successfully complete like a fishbone diagram? I like how you talked about do the fishbone, then you could drill down with 5 why, but how are you prepping the team to make sure that they do it correctly? Like, what else are you telling them in addition to doing what you just mentioned, which is, kind of the stations, if you will, one at a time?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, when I'm prepping a team to do a fishbone, I mean, one of the first things I want to do is kind of gauge their understanding of how this process works, right? So I like to have a little conversation. It usually starts off with, has anybody done this before? Do you understand? And I think a lot of it is in the setup. I mean, you could do it on a whiteboard, on a notebook paper, and yes, it's supposed to look like a fish, but we got to work with the real world.
And what are those 6 M's again? I think I could get 5 off the top of my head.
Right. Yeah. And it's a good point you bring up. I think the other thing that I always kind of coach the team with is, we have the 6 M's or the 6 categories. They're designed to foster thought and kind of guide. They are not silos that we have to stick to, that it's more important to get the thought or the idea or the possibility up in front of the group and less important as to where we put it, right? We can always move it later. It really doesn't matter. The point is to get this idea and this discovery happening. And that kind of leads to my next point. I think, a successful fishbone is about discovery. It's not about opinions. We don't want people selling their ideas. We want people discovering things that weren't on the table before, right? Mm-hmm. And when it really comes to fruition, when you have those like light bulb moments, it's usually a combination of thought and ideas, right? You have 2 people that have an idea, and then the third one that's a combination of those 2. That's the gold, right? Like that's the secret sauce.
Yeah.
So the sooner we can get to there, the sooner we can get things going, right? The other thing that I've definitely learned over time is always schedule more time than you think is necessary.
I hear you.
More time is necessary. And sometimes, depending on the audience, I like to give them an opportunity just to vent and kind of bring their preconceived notions to the surface right away to kind of get them off on the table. And we just put them over in the parking lot.
Yep.
As humans and just people in general, sometimes we just want to be heard, right?
That's really good. That's really good to get those feelings out too.
Get those feelings out, and then we can get to the discovery part, right?
Yep.
Because otherwise they're going to be in the back of everyone's head, right? And they're just waiting for that opportunity, and that anticipation builds.
Yeah.
And it's distracting, right? It's there, but it's not vocalized yet. So.
Have you seen the posting on LinkedIn that says, a good mind works like a parachute? It's always open. Right, like you got to get people's minds open, and I'm guilty of this too. Like once I, have the idea, I'm like, oh, you guys, this is it. I like want to galvanize, and it's like, well, okay, just listen. There's other ideas in the room. Right. Don't bulldoze anybody, even though maybe I want to, and then just let's have the team come up with the best solution.
Right,
and then even if it doesn't work, and it's a month later. Bite your tongue. You cannot say, I told you so. You got to just roll. You got to roll with it.
Right.
And then be like, oh, there's other alternatives, you know? So
Yeah. There's always other alternatives. And, the other thing is in prepping for this, I was thinking like our systems or processes, right? They're impartial, right? They don't produce good or bad results. They just produce results.
Yeah.
We put a value on what happens, right? They're just going through a process, a step in evolution, and something is changing. And it's up to us to change those factors to change the result, right? That's the core of it.
Yep. How do you, when you bring this team together and you have that understanding, how do you make sure that the teamwork, the brainstorming, and the RCA doesn't get to a point where there's finger pointing? Because then I think it could take kind of a slippery slope when people are like, oh, well, this didn't work because Jeremy. And like all of a sudden it's like, oh, Jeremy's going to immediately shut down. And the team like isn't going to get to a good spot together collectively.
Sure.
How do you prevent that from happening?
There's a couple things that come in mind. I mean, there's a couple just kind of dumb sayings that I preach to the team and the organization, right? One is, if your process has a first name, you don't have a process.
Nice.
And the other is that, because of my career shift where I went from operations, which is very, personnel and people oriented, guiding and directing and managing of individuals, to really shifting towards process orientation. I say things like, I don't fix people, I fix systems and processes.
Yeah.
So I get the pleasure of assuming that everyone is fantastic and that our systems are probably broken. So let's fix our system with the assumption that everyone is amazing.
Yeah, I like it. Just anchor people on that idea.
That's where we start.
And they're probably like, oh, Nathan thinks I'm amazing. All right, this is a good place to be.
And you just give people the benefit of the doubt, I think, and just tutoring the team in that way. It's opposed to assuming that somebody made a mistake. Assume that everyone is trying to do the best they can possibly do every single day.
Yep.
And how did we not set them up for success?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. That's a great place to start. That mindset and that baseline as a leader. Okay, I mean that's the bulk of what I wanted to ask you about. I do have one more question that kind of came to mind. It's a bit of a curveball.
All right.
So, I mean, I'll take you back to like Leonardo da Vinci. What do you think he would do right now if he were still alive and with us to help advance the manufacturing industry? Or even help advance like lean thinking? What do you think he would say or do?
That is a bit of a curveball. I appreciate that. I think just off the top of my head, just kind of from my understanding of who he is as a person, I think it would be a lot of visual manifestation, right?
Yeah.
Trying to open up and be, externally visualize and communicate the current, what is going on, and really just some open-minded thinking. I mean, if you look at his work, there was really nothing that was off the table, right? He came up with some very, very, off in left field type, ideas. And some of those led to the technologies that we work with every single day. Some of them went nowhere, right?
Right.
And just that ability to be open-minded and just explore and not having, putting yourself in we can't do this, we can't do that. I think that helps a lot. I have had conversations, with individuals where we're actually getting to root cause and they're like, whoa, but we can't fix that. I'm like, well, that doesn't matter today. Right now in this conversation, like everything is on the table, right? So just continuing to foster that kind of open-mindedness, I think, is a huge thing.
I love it. I figured you were a Leonardo da Vinci fan and would have a perspective on that, just based on the research I did. So I'm honored to have you on the podcast. Thank you for talking to me about getting to the root cause and really why some of these same problems keep coming back and then preventing it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Kirby Sneen with the Manufacturers Alliance, and this is the How Manufacturers Improve podcast. If you like learning these high-level best practices from experienced peers, and you want your team to be able to connect with people they can trust, see what's possible, and develop new lean and leadership skills when it works for them, go to mfrall.com or just click the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening.